Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the universe decided to get weird. He sat in his command chair aboard the orbital station New Horizon, watching Earth spin slowly below him like it had done every day for the past 3 years. The blue and white marble looked peaceful from up here, nothing like the crazy place he knew it really was. The first sign of trouble came from Lieutenant Amy Foster at the communications desk. She turned around with a confused look on her face and said the sensors were picking up something big coming in from deep space. Jake put down his coffee and walked over to look at her screen. The object was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built, and it was heading straight for Earth. Jake ordered the station to go to yellow alert. The crew moved quickly to their positions, while he tried to figure out what they were dealing with. The object looked like a crystal mixed with metal, all smooth curves and strange angles that hurt to look at for too long. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. Then it started talking. The voice came through every speaker on the station at once, speaking perfect English with a strange accent that sounded like wind chimes mixed with rocks falling. The creature said its name was Ambassador Zexthul, and it came from something called the crystalline hegemony. Jake felt his stomach drop as he realized he was having humanity's first real conversation with aliens. Ambassador Zexthul explained that it represented the Galactic Council, a group of 12 different alien species from across the galaxy. They had been watching Earth for a while and had finally decided to make contact. But they were not here just to say hello. They had a job offer. The aliens wanted to hold something called a neutral zone summit on Earth. According to Zexthul, this was the first time in over 300 years that all the major galactic powers had agreed to meet in one place. They needed somewhere completely neutral, somewhere that no species could claim as their own territory or use to gain an advantage over the others. That was where Earth came in. Jake listened in growing amazement as the alien ambassador explained why they had chosen Earth. The planet was what they called a Deathworld, a place so dangerous and hostile that no sane species would ever want to live there. The weather was too extreme, the animals were too aggressive, and the native population was completely insane. It was perfect for their needs. Dr. Lisa Campbell arrived on the bridge just as Zexthul was describing Earth's atmosphere as dangerously toxic and explaining how impressed they were that humans had somehow managed to survive in such terrible conditions. Lisa was the station's chief scientist and the closest thing they had to an expert on alien life. She looked just as confused as Jake felt. The ambassador continued talking, listing all the reasons why Earth was the most terrifying place in the known galaxy. The gravity was crushing, the water was corrosive, the air was poison, and the native life forms were so violent that they actually ate each other for fun. Jake and Lisa exchanged looks. They were talking about the same Earth, right? Zexthul seemed especially concerned about something called tectonic activity. Apparently, most planets in the galaxy were geologically stable, with surfaces that never changed. The idea of a planet where the ground could actually move and shake was absolutely horrifying to most alien species. They had chosen the Amazon rainforest as their meeting location because their scans showed it had the least geological activity on the planet. Jake almost laughed out loud at that. The Amazon was one of the most alive places on Earth, full of millions of different plants and animals all trying to eat each other. If the aliens thought that was the safe option, they were in for a big surprise. General Pete Rodriguez arrived on the bridge with a team of military advisors just as the aliens were explaining the details of their request. They wanted to bring representatives from 12 different species to Earth for a 2-week summit. Each species would bring their own security teams, medical staff, and diplomatic experts. They were talking about maybe 300 aliens total. The aliens had some specific requests for the summit location. They wanted it to be outdoors because they assumed Earth's atmosphere was too thin for their meeting halls to be effective. They wanted it near water because several of their species needed high humidity. And they wanted it to be isolated from human populations because they were worried about contaminating Earth's primitive culture with their advanced technology. Jake had to bite his tongue to keep from laughing at that last part. The aliens were worried about contaminating human culture while asking to hold their meeting in one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. They clearly had no idea what they were getting into. Dr. Campbell whispered to Jake that this could be the opportunity of a lifetime for humanity. First contact with not just one alien species, but 12 of them, and they were asking to come to Earth. She was practically bouncing with excitement as she talked about all the things they could learn. General Rodriguez was more cautious. He pointed out that they had no idea what these aliens were really capable of or what their true intentions might be. 300 armed aliens on Earth's surface was a security nightmare, even if they claimed to be peaceful. Ambassador Zexthul seemed to sense their hesitation. The alien explained that the Galactic Council was prepared to offer significant compensation for Earth's cooperation. They would share some of their technology, provide star charts showing the locations of other inhabited worlds, and officially recognize Earth as a sovereign planet under galactic law. Jake realized this was way above his pay grade. He told the ambassador that he would need to discuss the request with Earth's government and get back to them. Zexthul said they understood and would wait in orbit for an answer. The alien ship moved to a position near the moon and went quiet. Within hours, every major government on Earth was involved in emergency meetings. The president called Jake directly to get a full report. The United Nations went into emergency session. Scientists around the world started making plans for the biggest first contact event in human history. Jake sat in his command chair and looked down at Earth. In 2 weeks, it might be crawling with aliens who thought they were visiting the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. He wondered which one of them was going to get the bigger surprise. 2 weeks later, Commander Ryan Burke stood in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, watching the most expensive camping trip in human history fall apart in real time. The aliens had landed their shuttles in a clearing beside the Amazon River just after dawn, and within 30 minutes, half of them were having nervous breakdowns. The problems started before the aliens even got out of their ships. Dr. Helen Ross, the expedition's chief medical officer, watched her instruments go crazy as the alien vessels touched down. The ships were sealed tight and pumping out artificial atmospheres, but she could already see signs of panic through the small windows. Several of the aliens were pressed against the glass, staring out at the forest like they were looking at their own deaths. The first alien to actually step outside was from a species called the Veltar. It looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a crystal formation, all sharp angles and translucent blue skin. The creature took one step onto the soft earth and immediately started shaking. Its translator device was working overtime, sending out a stream of what sounded like prayers in a dozen different languages. Engineer Tony Martinez was busy setting up the communication equipment when a butterfly landed on the Veltar ambassador's environmental suit. The alien let out a sound that made everyone in the clearing cover their ears and started spinning in circles, trying to get the butterfly off. It was convinced that the small, colorful insect was some kind of flying predator sent to attack the delegation. Dr. Lisa Campbell tried to explain that butterflies were harmless, but the Veltar would not listen. According to its species database, Nothing that could fly in a gravity field this strong could possibly be peaceful. The butterfly must be a highly evolved killing machine disguised as something beautiful. 3 Veltar security guards surrounded their ambassador with energy shields, while the butterfly flew away, completely unaware of the terror it had caused. Things got worse when the Quartzling delegation tried to leave their ship. The Quartzlings were silicon-based life forms that looked like walking rock formations. They were used to living on worlds with perfectly flat, stable surfaces made of solid crystal. The uneven ground of the forest floor was like an obstacle course designed by a madman. The first Quartzling to step on a fallen log immediately shattered 3 of its limbs. The creature was not used to surfaces that could bend or give way under pressure. Dr. Ross rushed over with her medical kit, but she had no idea how to treat a patient made of living stone. The Quartzling's medical officer was screaming something about impossible terrain conditions and demanding immediate evacuation. Lieutenant Chris Moore was coordinating the security perimeter when the photosynthetic delegates from the Greenwave Collective started having their own crisis. These aliens looked like walking trees with silver bark and leaves that changed color based on their emotions. They had assumed that Earth's sun would be similar to their own gentle star, but Earth's sunlight was far more intense than anything they had ever experienced. Within minutes of stepping into direct sunlight, the Greenwave representative's leaves started turning brown and curling up. The alien was essentially getting a severe sunburn from what humans considered normal daylight. Dr. Campbell quickly ordered the construction of emergency shade structures while the alien medical team went into panic mode. The humidity was causing problems for almost everyone. Earth's atmosphere contained more water vapor than most of the aliens had ever encountered. Several species discovered that their environmental suits were not designed to handle air that was essentially a light mist. Seals were failing, filters were clogging, and electronics were shorting out from moisture that humans barely noticed. Sergeant Kelly Barnes was documenting everything for the official report when the aliens discovered Earth's wildlife. A group of capuchin monkeys had been watching the strange new arrivals from the trees, and their curiosity finally got the better of them. The monkeys came down to investigate, chattering and playing with each other like they always did. The reaction from the alien delegates was immediate and terrifying. 6 different species went into full combat alert, convinced that the monkeys were some kind of intelligent assault team. The fact that the monkeys were clearly communicating with each other in a complex language was proof that they were planning a coordinated attack. Energy weapons powered up, force fields activated, and 3 ambassadors retreated to their ships. Captain Ben Davis tried to explain that the monkeys were just curious animals, but the aliens would not believe him. According to their understanding of evolution, any species that could develop complex communication and use tools had to be a potential threat. The monkeys were obviously Earth's secondary intelligence, probably working with the humans to test the alien visitors. The first night was a nightmare. Colonel Steve Adams had positioned human security teams around the perimeter, but they spent most of their time trying to calm down terrified aliens rather than watching for actual threats. Every sound from the forest sent someone into panic mode. The calls of howler monkeys at dawn caused 3 different species to declare medical emergencies and request immediate evacuation. Dr. Ross was working around the clock treating patients for everything from anxiety attacks to equipment failures. The crystalline hegemony's representative needed emergency repairs after his exoskeleton cracked from the stress of dealing with unpredictable air pressure. A delegate from the Spiral Arm Coalition went into shock when he realized that Earth's weather could change without warning, something that never happened on his perfectly climate-controlled homeworld. The breaking point came on the second day when it started to rain. What the Human Weather Service had classified as a light shower triggered emergency protocols among all 12 alien species. Water falling from the sky was something that most of them had only heard about in horror stories from the few death worlds that had been discovered and quickly abandoned. Engineer Patricia Young found herself building emergency shelters as fast as she could, while alien engineers screamed about catastrophic system failures. Water was getting into everything, shorting out computers, dissolving seal materials, and causing environmental suits to fail in ways their designers had never imagined. Several aliens had to be evacuated to their ships when their breathing apparatus started dissolving in the rain. Field medic Kevin Clark assisted Dr. Ross as they performed emergency procedures on aliens whose biology was completely incompatible with Earth's environment. The Greenwave Collective's representative was going into something that their medical team called catastrophic system failure, essentially dying from exposure to liquid water. The most frustrating part for the human team was how normal everything seemed. The rain was gentle, the temperature was comfortable, and the forest was just doing what forests always did. Birds were singing, insects were buzzing, and small animals were going about their daily routines. To human eyes, it was a beautiful day in one of the most peaceful places on Earth. But to the aliens, they had landed in the middle of an active war zone where the environment itself was trying to kill them. Every raindrop was a chemical weapon, every insect was a potential assassin, and every sound from the forest was evidence of unseen predators closing in for the attack. Security Chief Matt Turner maintained order as best he could, but he was starting to wonder if the summit would survive its first week. The aliens were demanding immediate evacuation, while their governments were insisting that the meeting continue as planned. Humanity was caught in the middle, trying to keep everyone alive in what they considered one of the safest places on the planet. Field researcher Tom Bradley had never expected to become a survival instructor for aliens, but life had a way of throwing curveballs. He stood in front of 12 terrified ambassadors, holding a stick and trying to explain one of the most basic rules of Earth survival without causing another panic attack. Tom held up the stick and pointed to a bright red frog sitting on a nearby branch. The frog was about the size of his thumb and looked like a tiny jewel in the morning light. To Tom, it was obviously a poison dart frog, something any human child would know to avoid. To the aliens, it was just another incomprehensible horror, in a world full of them. The Veltar ambassador was shaking so hard that his translator was having trouble keeping up. Through the static, Tom could make out questions about the frog's attack patterns, its weapon systems, and whether it was working with the local human population. Tom tried to explain that the frog was not a weapon, just a small animal that happened to be extremely toxic to anything that tried to eat it. This explanation made things worse. The concept of a creature that was deadly simply by existing was beyond most of the aliens' understanding. On their homeworlds, dangerous things looked dangerous. Predators had claws and teeth and armor. They did not come in bright, beautiful colors that attracted attention. Dr. Nancy Collins was getting tired of treating alien patients for what were essentially panic attacks caused by completely normal Earth phenomena. The latest crisis had been triggered by a group of butterflies migrating through the clearing. The sight of dozens of flying creatures moving in a coordinated pattern had convinced half the alien security teams that they were under attack by some kind of aerial assault force. The silicon-based Quartzling ambassador was the worst patient she had ever dealt with. The creature kept crumbling apart every time it encountered something unexpected, which on Earth happened about every 30 seconds. Its medical team had to perform emergency repairs 3 times in the past hour, and they were running out of the special cement they used to hold their people together. Captain Ben Davis was leading a group of human volunteers who had been assigned as bodyguards for the alien delegates. The situation was beyond ridiculous. Some of the aliens were veteran warriors who had fought in galactic conflicts spanning multiple star systems, and they were hiding behind human teenagers who were just trying to be helpful. The worst incident happened when Corporal Linda Hayes was escorting the Spiral Arm Coalition's military advisor through the forest. The alien was wearing full combat armor and carrying weapons that could probably level a city block. But when a curious jaguar appeared on the path ahead of them, the warrior immediately hid behind Linda and started calling for backup. Linda looked at the jaguar, which was just sunning itself on a fallen log about 50 feet away. She had grown up in rural Montana and had dealt with mountain lions before. This jaguar was not even paying attention to them, just enjoying the warm morning sun. But to the alien, it was obviously a massive predator preparing to attack. Linda walked slowly toward the jaguar, speaking in a calm, quiet voice. The big cat looked at her for a moment, decided she was not interesting, and wandered off into the forest. The alien military advisor spent the next hour documenting the encounter as evidence of humanity's supernatural ability to communicate with apex predators. The communication problems were getting worse every day. Engineer Patricia Young was working around the clock trying to adapt alien technology to work in Earth's environment, but she was fighting a losing battle. The aliens' equipment had been designed for sterile, controlled environments, not for a world where the very air was full of moisture, pollen, and microscopic life. The latest disaster had been caused by spores from a nearby fungus that had gotten into the air filtration systems of 3 different alien species. The spores were completely harmless to humans, just part of the forest's natural ecosystem, but they were causing massive system failures in alien equipment that had never been designed to deal with biological contamination. Security Chief Matt Turner was documenting everything for what he suspected would be the most unusual after-action report in military history. The human security team was not protecting the aliens from external threats. They were protecting them from Earth itself. Every raindrop, every insect, every gust of wind was a potential crisis that could send the entire diplomatic mission into chaos. The absurdity reached new heights when it started raining again. Dr. Carol Stevens, the team's entomologist, was trying to explain to a group of alien scientists that rain was actually necessary for life on Earth, but they were not listening. They were too busy implementing emergency protocols to deal with what they saw as a chemical weapons attack from the sky. The Greenwave Collective's representative was having the hardest time. As a photosynthetic species, it needed sunlight to survive, but Earth's sun was too intense for its delicate system. When it tried to hide from the sun, it started to weaken from lack of energy. When it tried to absorb sunlight, it got severe burns. Dr. Collins had to set up a complex system of filters and mirrors to give the alien just the right amount of light to survive. Ranger Nicole Adams had become the unofficial translator between the human and alien teams. She had spent years working in national parks and was used to dealing with people who were not comfortable in natural environments. But the aliens were in a category all by themselves. She found herself explaining basic concepts like why water fell from the sky and why plants grew toward the sun. The aliens were documenting everything, but their reports were reading like horror stories. Nicole watched an alien anthropologist recording her casual interaction with a venomous snake as evidence of humanity's supernatural resistance to toxins. The snake had just been crossing the path, and Nicole had simply waited for it to pass, before continuing on her way. To her, it was basic common sense. To the aliens, it was proof that humans were not entirely natural. The situation with the children was causing the most confusion. A group of local kids had been brought in to help with simple tasks like carrying supplies, and their presence was driving the aliens to distraction. The sight of human juveniles playing in water that would dissolve alien equipment, laughing in gravity that would crush alien bones, and casually handling plants that were toxic to most galactic species was more evidence that humanity was not a normal species. Marine biologist Dr. Paul Rodriguez was trying to explain the concept of symbiosis to a group of alien scientists when a family of river dolphins appeared in the Amazon. The dolphins were just being dolphins, playing in the water and investigating the strange new arrivals on the shore. But to 6 different alien species, they looked like aquatic assault vehicles conducting reconnaissance for a possible attack. The dolphins' echolocation calls were interpreted as some kind of communication system, probably coordinating with human forces. The fact that Dr. Rodriguez could identify individual dolphins and predict their behavior was seen as proof that humans had some kind of psychic connection with Earth's wildlife. Captain Julie Richardson was coordinating evacuation procedures for delegates who were having complete mental breakdowns from exposure to normal Earth conditions. The crystalline hegemony's trade representative had gone into shock after seeing a butterfly emerge from its cocoon, convinced that he was witnessing some kind of biological weapon deployment. 3 other delegates were in isolation chambers, being treated for what their medical teams called reality displacement syndrome. Field Commander Sam Cooper was starting to think that the real diplomatic breakthrough would be if anyone survived the full 2 weeks. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to deal with a dangerous but predictable environment, like a desert or an ice world. Instead, they had found themselves in a place where the very concept of safety did not exist, where every breath of air contained millions of microscopic organisms, and where the native species seemed to thrive on conditions that would kill most galactic civilizations. The human team was learning just as much as the aliens, but in a different way. They were discovering that what they considered normal was actually extraordinary by galactic standards. Earth was not just unusual, it was impossible. And somehow, humans had not just survived in this impossible place, they had made it their home. Dr. Carol Stevens was having the best day of her professional life right up until it turned into the worst day in galactic diplomatic history. She had been tracking a column of army ants through the forest for 3 days, documenting their migration, patterns, and taking notes on their social structure. To her, it was fascinating science. To 12 different alien species, it was the beginning of an invasion. The ants appeared at the edge of the clearing just after breakfast on the summit's 7th day. There were millions of them, moving in perfect formation through the forest, in a column that stretched for miles. They were just doing what army ants had been doing for millions of years, following chemical trails and looking for food. But when the alien security teams saw them coming, they immediately assumed they were under attack. Colonel Gary Thompson was in the middle of his morning briefing when the first alarm went off. The Veltar delegation's sensors had detected what they called a massive ground assault force approaching from the northeast. Their tactical computers were showing movement patterns that looked like a coordinated military advance, with scouts, main forces, and support units all moving in perfect synchronization. The reality was that the ants were just following the scent, trails left by their scouts, but try explaining that to aliens who had never seen a true hive mind in action. The Veltar military advisor was convinced that Earth's secondary intelligence network was launching an attack on the summit, probably coordinated with the human forces to eliminate the alien delegation. Gary tried to explain that the ants were harmless to anything larger than an insect, but the aliens were not listening. They were too busy implementing what they called maximum defensive protocols. Energy shields went up around the alien camps, weapon systems powered up, and 9 different species prepared for what they were sure would be a fight for their lives. The first shots were fired by the Quartzling security team. Their plasma cannons lit up the forest edge, turning sand into glass and trees into ash. The ants, completely unimpressed by the light show, continued their march. The weapons that could level mountains had no effect on creatures that were each smaller than a human fingernail. Engineer Tony Martinez watched in amazement as the most advanced military technology in the galaxy proved completely useless against Earth's simplest creatures. The aliens were firing quantum disruptors, particle beams, and exotic matter weapons at insects that were just trying to find something to eat. It was like trying to stop a river with a handful of bullets. The situation got worse when the aliens realized their weapons were not working. The Spiral Arm Coalition's military commander authorized the use of area effect weapons, filling the air with energy that could sterilize entire city blocks. The ants walked through the bombardment like it was a light rain, their simple biology too basic to be affected by weapons designed to disrupt complex molecular structures. Ranger Nicole Adams tried to get between the aliens and the ants, but it was too dangerous with all the energy weapons going off. She watched from behind a tree as millions of credits worth of military hardware was used to fight insects that would have been stopped by a simple barrier of water and soap. The aliens were panicking because they could not understand how anything could be immune to their most powerful weapons. The ants reached the clearing and did exactly what army ants always do. They flowed around obstacles, investigated anything that might be food, and continued on their way. A few of them climbed on some of the alien equipment, found it uninteresting, and moved on. To the ants, the aliens were just strange-smelling rocks that were not worth eating. But to the aliens, the fact that their defenses had been completely ignored was proof that they were dealing with something beyond their understanding. The Green Wave Collective's military analyst was broadcasting emergency reports about Earth's ability to deploy biological weapons that could phase through energy shields and ignore directed energy attacks. Dr. Helen Ross was treating alien soldiers for panic attacks and nervous breakdowns while their commanders tried to figure out how to fight an enemy that could not be killed. Several aliens had collapsed when they realized that the ants were not even trying to attack them. They were just treating the entire alien force as irrelevant obstacles to walk around. The crisis reached its peak when the ants discovered the alien food supplies. The creatures were attracted to anything that contained sugars or proteins, and the alien emergency rations were like a beacon to them. Thousands of ants swarmed over the supply depot, not attacking anything, just investigating and sampling. 3 different alien species interpreted this as a reconnaissance mission, preparing for a full assault. The ants were obviously gathering intelligence about alien capabilities and weaknesses. The fact that they were working together in perfect coordination was proof that they were part of a larger military organization, probably commanded by the humans. Captain Ben Davis was coordinating with increasingly desperate alien military advisors who were demanding human assistance in fighting the ant invasion. They wanted to know about human anti-insect weapons, biological warfare protocols, and defensive strategies against micro-scale assault forces. Ben tried to explain that humans usually just avoided ant columns or waited for them to pass, but this was seen as evidence of a secret alliance between humans and the insects. The absurdity reached new levels when the aliens started targeting individual ants with precision weapons designed for space combat. Weapons that could destroy asteroids were being used to shoot at creatures that weighed less than a paperclip. The ants that were hit simply disappeared in tiny puffs of vapor, while the rest of the column continued moving as if nothing had happened. Field Medic Kevin Clark was documenting the weapons fire for the safety report when he noticed something that made him laugh out loud. The aliens were so focused on fighting the ants that they had not noticed the real predators moving in. A group of anteaters had been attracted by the commotion and were now approaching the clearing, probably thinking they had discovered the biggest ant feast in history. The anteaters' appearance caused a complete breakdown in alien military discipline. Here were massive creatures, each weighing hundreds of pounds, that were obviously designed to hunt and kill the ant army. The aliens were convinced that the ants had called in their biological support units, creatures bred specifically to fight alongside the insect army. Captain Julie Richardson tried to explain that anteaters were just animals that ate ants, but the alien military commanders were not listening. They were too busy trying to figure out how to fight creatures that were immune to their weapons, supported by giant biological war machines, and commanded by humans who seemed to think the whole situation was funny. Security Chief Matt Turner was maintaining communications with increasingly frantic alien governments, while their military forces on the ground reported complete failure of all defensive systems. The official reports were describing Earth as a planet where the native wildlife could deploy coordinated military attacks using creatures that were immune to advanced weapons and supported by massive biological combat units. The situation finally calmed down when the ants finished their investigation and continued on their way. The column flowed past the clearing and disappeared into the forest, leaving behind a group of aliens who were convinced they had just survived the most sophisticated military attack in galactic history. The anteaters, disappointed by the lack of ants, wandered off to look for food elsewhere. Dr. Stevens emerged from her hiding place and tried to explain to the alien scientists that what they had just witnessed was completely normal behavior for army ants. They migrate through the forest every few weeks, following scent trails and looking for food. There was no intelligence behind it, no coordination with humans, and no military purpose. The aliens did not believe her. According to their understanding of military tactics, what they had witnessed was a textbook example of psychological warfare combined with technological demonstration. The Earth forces had shown that they could deploy millions of units that were immune to galactic weapons, supported by biological assets, and coordinated through methods that were beyond alien understanding. Colonel Thompson received reports from alien military commanders describing Earth as a planet with defensive capabilities that made it impossible to conquer. Any invasion force would face not just human resistance, but coordinated attacks from Earth's entire ecosystem. The planet itself was a weapon, and humans were just the species that had learned to work with it. The final insult came when a local child wandered into the clearing and casually brushed some remaining ants off a fallen log so she could sit down. The sight of a human juvenile treating the terrifying ant army as a minor inconvenience was the final proof that humanity was not a normal species. They lived on a world where the very environment was hostile to galactic civilization, and they had not just adapted to it, they had made it their ally. 3 weeks after the most disastrous diplomatic summit in galactic history, Ambassador Zex Thule sat in his specially constructed isolation chamber aboard his flagship and tried to write a report that would not cause panic across 12 different star systems. The chamber was sealed, sterilized, and pumped full of artificial atmosphere that contained absolutely nothing from Earth. Even so, he could still feel the phantom sensation of that terrible planet's toxic air burning his respiratory systems. The summit had officially ended that morning with a ceremony that nobody would ever forget. The human delegation, led by Captain Jake Morrison, had gathered in the clearing beside the Amazon River to formally close the negotiations. They looked completely relaxed, as if they had spent the past 3 weeks at a pleasant vacation resort, instead of surviving in conditions that had driven half the galactic delegates to complete mental breakdowns. Dr. Lisa Campbell had presented the final research data to the assembled aliens, speaking cheerfully about Earth's biodiversity and climate patterns while standing in direct sunlight that would have killed most of them in minutes. She talked about the local wildlife as if they were old friends, mentioning the jaguars and anacondas and poison dart frogs with the same casual tone that other species used to discuss harmless pets. The formal conclusion of the summit had been interrupted by a family of river dolphins that appeared in the Amazon River, apparently attracted by the commotion. The dolphins played in the water, splashing and calling to each other, while several alien delegates hid behind their security teams. Dr. Paul Rodriguez had waved at the dolphins as if he knew them personally, which several alien anthropologists immediately documented as evidence of human telepathic abilities. The final straw had come when a group of human children arrived to help pack up the equipment. The kids splashed through water that would dissolve alien technology, laughed and played in gravity that would crush most galactic species, and casually handled plants that were classified as deadly toxins by 7 different civilizations. They treated the alien visitors like interesting tourists, completely unaware that they were terrifying representatives of advanced galactic powers. One little girl named Mia Johnson had approached the crystalline hegemony's cultural attaché and offered to show him a butterfly she had caught. The alien had gone into immediate panic mode, convinced that the child was threatening him with some kind of biological weapon. When Mia gently released the butterfly and it flew away, the alien had spent an hour documenting the encounter as evidence of humanity's ability to control Earth's wildlife through unknown methods. Ambassador Zexthul began his report with the official conclusion that the Galactic Council had reached after emergency sessions on 12 different worlds. Earth was hereby classified as a Class X quarantine world, the most dangerous category in galactic law. The planet was to be avoided by all civilian traffic, and military vessels were advised to maintain a minimum safe distance of 1 full stellar system. The humans were being reclassified from their previous status as a developing civilization to something entirely new. The official designation was Berserker species with reality-warping survival capabilities, a classification that had to be created specifically for them. According to the new galactic protocols, humans were to be treated with extreme caution and given whatever they wanted to keep them happy on their Deathworld. Captain Morrison had been officially promoted to the position of Deathworld Liaison, a job that nobody else in the galaxy wanted. His responsibilities included managing all future contact between humanity and galactic civilization, a task that most aliens considered tantamount to a suicide mission. The position came with a salary that could buy small planets, partly because nobody expected him to live long enough to spend it. Dr. Campbell had received the galaxy's first impossible life-form research grant, along with funding to establish a research station that would study Earth from a safe distance of several light years. No alien scientist was willing to actually visit Earth again, but they were desperate to understand how humans had evolved on a planet that violated most known laws of biology and physics. The official report that Ambassador Zexthul was writing described Earth as a world where the atmosphere was composed of toxic gases. The water was a universal solvent that dissolved most known materials, and the gravity was strong enough to crush the bones of most galactic species. The native wildlife included creatures that were immune to advanced weapons, plants that produced deadly toxins as a defense mechanism, and microscopic organisms that could survive in conditions that would sterilize most planets. But the most terrifying aspect of Earth was not the environment itself. It was the fact that humans considered all of these deadly conditions to be normal. They had not just adapted to survive on their impossible world. They had thrived there. Children played in conditions that would kill trained soldiers from other species, and adults treated exposure to lethal environments as recreational activities. The report included testimony from military commanders who had witnessed humans casually, handling creatures that were immune to galactic weapons technology. There were documented cases of human juveniles demonstrating supernatural abilities, such as the child who had controlled biological assault units through direct neural interface. The evidence suggested that humans had evolved some kind of symbiotic relationship with their planet's hostile ecosystem. General Pete Rodriguez had been contacted by 7 different galactic governments asking for advice on how to defend against potential human expansion. The aliens were convinced that any species capable of surviving on Earth would be unstoppable if they ever decided to leave their homeworld. Rodriguez had politely explained that humans were peaceful and had no intention of conquering anyone, but this had only made the aliens more nervous. The new galactic regulations required 3 months of psychological preparation before any alien could have direct contact with human representatives. The preparation included exposure therapy for dealing with toxic atmospheres, gravity adaptation training, and extensive counseling to help aliens cope with the concept of voluntary exposure to deadly environments. Earth's new status as the galaxy's premier death world had unexpected diplomatic advantages. The Amazon facility was being designated as the absolute last resort meeting place for negotiations, where all parties needed to be too terrified to fight each other. The mere threat of holding diplomatic talks on Earth was enough to make most conflicts resolve themselves through peaceful means. The final section of Ambassador Zexthul's report dealt with the ongoing mystery of human psychology. According to all available evidence, humans genuinely believed that their world was a pleasant place to live. They showed no signs of the severe mental trauma that would be expected from any species forced to survive in such conditions. Instead, they seemed to enjoy their hostile environment, treating deadly weather patterns as entertainment and referring to toxic wildlife as beautiful. The most disturbing example was the human teenager who had been observed fishing in the Amazon River, while alien observation drones maintained what they considered a safe distance from orbit. The girl sat peacefully beside water that contained dozens of species of deadly predators, surrounded by plants that produced neurotoxins, breathing air that would kill most galactic species in minutes. She looked completely relaxed, as if she was in the safest place in the universe. Her grandfather had told stories about catching even larger fish in the same river, tales that alien anthropologists were now studying as historical documents describing humanity's long-term survival strategies on their impossible world. The stories included casual references to encounters with creatures that galactic military forces had classified as apex predators, treated by humans as minor inconveniences to be avoided or dealt with through simple techniques. Security Chief Matt Turner had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Safety Protocols with a budget that could fund small wars. His job was to ensure that future human-alien interactions did not result in mass casualties from aliens being exposed to normal Earth conditions. The protocols included emergency medical facilities, environmental isolation systems, and psychological support teams for aliens suffering from reality displacement syndrome. The summit's final ceremony had included the presentation of gifts from each alien species to humanity. Most of the gifts were advanced technologies that the aliens hoped would encourage humans to stay on their own planet. The subtext was clear, although nobody said it out loud. Please take these wonderful presents and promise never to visit our peaceful, safe worlds with your casual attitude toward impossible survival conditions. Dr. Carol Stevens had been appointed as director of Deathworld Studies, a new field of science that existed solely to study Earth and its inhabitants. Her first research paper, titled The Psychological Warfare Applications of Colorful Flying Creatures, was being translated into dozens of alien languages and distributed to military academies across the galaxy. The story concluded with Mia Johnson, sitting by the Amazon River with her fishing pole, completely unaware that she was being watched by terrified alien scientists from orbit. Her peaceful afternoon by the water had been classified by 7 different species as a demonstration of humanity's supernatural ability to coexist with cosmic horror. She caught 3 fish, released 2 of them back into the river, and went home for dinner, leaving behind a legacy that would reshape galactic civilization. Ambassador Zexthul finished his report and sealed it in a container that would take it safely away from Earth's influence. He looked out at the blue and white planet spinning peacefully below and shuddered. Somewhere down there, humans were going about their daily lives in conditions that would exterminate most galactic civilizations. And they were probably enjoying themselves while they did it. The galaxy would never be the same.